Shout out to Americans today. Happy Independence Day. Fighting for your freedom on this day, 1776. 250 years, I think, since your independence. And there's been a lot of talk on today being the day that there's possibly some kind of man-made virus called SPARS that might be introduced into the population, possibly in New York today. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. Clearly, it's something that I had put on my whiteboard. It was either the end of December of 2022 or January of 2023. But I've kept this whiteboard because, again, we're still going through a lot of these things. And so on my list from as early as the 1st of January of 2023, there's SPARS, specifically 2025, man-made virus, question mark, and I hope not. I really hope not. And so people were thinking that things like monkeypox and these other viruses were possibly going to be causing another pandemic internationally. That didn't happen. People were calling it out, luckily, and showing that there were even vaccines that have the chimpanzee adenovirus within the therapeutics, not vaccines. And so it was very interesting that, okay, so if you get this vaccine, you might actually test positive for monkeypox or monkey virus by virtue of being inoculated. So anyways, I digress. Again, I'll reiterate, I hope that doesn't happen. And I think the more people that call it out, and a lot of people are calling it out, and so who knows? There's been exercises and tabletop operations, etc., that have been ongoing for the last several years, which is why it's on the friggin' board. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see. People saying that it might possibly be similar to some kind of symptoms that people get through rabies. And there's been seeds planted about that as well. So it was just very interesting. And so yesterday I did a video in the afternoon. I wasn't going to do one, but a lot of people were sharing the FDA now updating their warning labels on the COVID therapeutics to include the risks of myocarditis and pericarditis. And I did share sent emails that I sent to so many different levels of government, so many different news outlets, so many different people of influence throughout the world. And even getting confirmation of the emails being received and nothing back. So I would call and follow up. Nothing came back. And so I'm just going to go through those sent messages again because I cleaned it up a little bit and I put some things in my private folder so that I'm not going to be sharing people's information. So anyways, this was even Canada, like the Movadis in Ontario, like I was sharing with them information. I was sharing news.cfra.com. You are lying to people was the headline. Again, a catchy subject titles I was looking at first. And then even with Mark Day, who's part of Oz, who I've also called up before, I think that he's part of the intelligence communities that are pushing propaganda and psychological operations. And I was exposing some stuff that he was claiming on Twitter several years ago when it was still Twitter, not X. And he blocked me like a little coward. And so I was giving him data. Didn't want to look at it. Again, news online, ctv.ca, news at ctv.ca, and so many other different organizations. The People's Party of Canada, Ottawa Morning, Jim Watson, who was the mayor of Ottawa, rather not Ontario, the mayor of Ottawa for over 10 years. He was able to resign, not in disgrace. And this guy, again, Nuremberg 2.0, should be in jail. Dr. Theresa Tam, 2021, November 1st. And in this title, it said, please read the actual scientific and medical facts regarding COVID and vaccines. Again, nothing crazy. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm not being weird. I'm not being aggressive in these emails at all. And I was sharing medical, scientific, and government data to these people. And so there are people that are saying, you can't expect the MPs to respond to or look at your emails if you're not from their ridings. I reject that claim when it comes to matters of this level of importance. So I don't care who you are in the House of Commons, you are an elected official. And if you're voting on things like the pandemic, the lockdowns, and the enforced inoculations, I'm sorry, read your goddamn emails. All right, you are getting them. And so again, I'm not wanting to call anyone out on this. But again, I saw a video on Instagram about that yesterday, and I'm like, that is bullshit, respectfully speaking. Maybe obviously when it comes to matters within your district, yeah, like respond to those. But when it comes to, again, things of international significance, like the war in Russia and Ukraine, or the carbon tax, or the COVID pandemic, respond to your goddamn emails respectfully. again, especially when the title says, this might be of importance. Oh, and it might also impact people in your riding, as well as so many other people within Canada. And so this is what fires me up. No notes yet again. When I was a battle group embarkation officer and platoon commander, uh, prior to deploying and then on the redeployment for the relief in place, and again moving people and equipment and resources, etc., all over Canada into Afghanistan, and then from Afghanistan, from CAF or Kabul, wherever people were coming from, and then having them to move towards their areas of operations. Do people not think that I was getting hundreds of emails a day? I was getting hundreds of emails a day. I didn't even have a break. I was sleeping in my office, oftentimes, or I was getting in really, really early, and I was spending several hours in my mornings when no one was at work, and I was responding to these emails, acknowledging these emails, and then having to adjust TMSTs, manifests, etc., or responding to, obviously, like with my platoon as well, or the company that I was working with, on even those matters as well. And so it can be time consuming, yes, but it's your job. And these people, these clowns in cabinet and the House of Commons, they get paid way, way more money, than I was getting. And they get long breaks, way longer breaks than I ever had. Again, I was giving in leave passes for several years. And other officers that are listening to this, whether they're still serving or veterans, they know this. You're still going to work. You're still going to work. And then after major exercises or deployments, etc., when your subordinates are getting time off, and deservedly so, you are still showing up to work. You are still the next morning or 2 mornings afterwards. And again, for administration, logistics, etc. And so this excuse of, oh, like they get hundreds of emails a day. First of all, no, they don't. And this is confirmed by many people that work with them or were city councilors, et cetera, talking to these people. And even if they did, so what? That is your job. And if there's emails that are not specific to your writing, then you forward that email. You forward these emails to people who you should be sending it to, like the public safety officer, like Marco Benicino at the time. And again, he's on this list, like the chief public health officer, or whatever you want to call her, Teresa Tam, who should be in jail, and others. You don't just, delete, dismiss. No, you don't. Because again, paid way more money than I was getting when I was serving. And again, I'm getting no money to share all this information that I was providing. And I've shared even where I was putting together templates of memorandums for people within the Canadian Armed Forces, or within law enforcement, or the fire department, etc., all over Canada, to give to their supervisors, their chain of commands. And I was directing it to Wayne Eyre, who was the chief of defense staff at the time as well. And this is official military correspondence or government correspondence, and it should be actioned and mitigated and go towards the people that it's supposed to go to, who it's written for, on behalf of. And so this is the information I was providing. Natural immunity being superior. I was giving the VAERS, the vaccine adverse events reported, provisional death counts and excess mortality in Canada. I was giving, I was sharing the information about the healthcare professionals in Ontario, the whistleblowers, people that lost their businesses, lost their licenses, got charged, suspended, etc., lives ruined. And also people were speaking out on people that had the VAERS, either people that were dead and their family members were speaking out, or people that had significant VAERS and lives destroyed because of that. Aspirating needles. We were not aspirating needles. And that was something that was even taken out of the list of what you were supposed to do when you inoculate people, is when you put the vaccine or the inoculation in your friggin' arm, you're supposed to draw back a little bit. And if there's any blood, then you remove the needle and then you start again. And these were huge needles, okay? And so the chances of this needle hitting a vessel, especially in a child's arms, small little arms, was very, very high. And I was being, again, generous to the vaccinated, saying that the estimate would be anywhere between it would be 1 in every 4,000 to 6,000 inoculations where that needle would be hitting a vessel, and it would be higher in children. And they were not looking at that. And again, our healthcare professionals, people that were jabbing people throughout, they were not aspirating needles, but they were in Asia, and I was showing that as well. And so why did we take that out of the list of things that you had to do when you inoculate people? And Dr. John Campbell, who is an actual expert, who is vaccinated and has did a 180 since more information has come out by people like myself, he was talking about not aspirating needles very early on as well, and his concerns about that. I was talking about being an outbreak of viral pneumonia, became a health crisis. I was talking about So many different things. But again, if you look here, myocarditis and pericarditis following vaccination with COVID-19 mRNA vaccinations. I gave that information. And again, the dates are in 2021. These were only released, I think it was in September of 2021. And shortly thereafter, I had that information. Why? Because I was doing my own research. I was on a VPN, a virtual private network, and I was connecting to other countries because Canada was so friggin' censored at the time, and so was the US, that was the only way I could get access to this information. So no, I was not getting this from YouTube. No, I was not getting this from Instagram. I was getting this from actual medical, credible sources, medical, scientific, and governmental in nature. UK technical notes. I was giving memorandums from Kieran Moore, even in August of 21, saying the same thing, that there was no difference between people that were not inoculated or not when it came to even the adverse events. And again, this is largely due to not only the therapeutic and what's in the therapeutic, but the health of the host, the person that's getting the vaccine, whether you would be having more symptomatic side effects or not. And that is even for any virus or disease or injury. The more unfit you are, the fatter you are, respectfully speaking, or if you have comorbid conditions like diabetes, again, lifestyle, or like lung issues, etc., then again, you would have more adverse outcomes. No shit. And so people were not looking at getting out and getting exposed to the sun, which assists with vitamin D and regulating your circadian rhythm and all that other stuff, but also losing a little bit of weight so that you would have less severe outcomes had you been in contact with a virus. And again, man-made. I called out Teresa Tam and the lab in Winnipeg, and the two Chinese spies that had top secret government clearance that were giving national security secrets to China. And I talked about the lab leak in China from 2019. I talked about the Wuhan CISM military games, which encompassed multiple different military governments and countries. Their militaries that were representing their countries in these games. And again, that was in October of 2019. I talked about Li Wenliang, and he was exposing this even as early that I came aware of in January, February of 2021. And Health Santé, multiple emails to them. Jim Watt, like I already said, the mayor of Ottawa, pretty significant. Again, Mark Day, Jordan Peterson, his business account. So many different people. Marilyn Gladu. I just want to go through the list here because there's others. Jean-Yves Duclos, and I think he's still a cabinet member yet again, and he got access to all this information. OPH Media, Ottawa.ca, Glenn Gower. So when I talked about him yesterday, Glenn Gower, I lived in Stittsville at the time. I had to flee my friggin' home because I was getting targeted and doxxed by multiple different groups. And so he was the mayor of Stittsville, and I think he still is. And he also got information from myself and countless other people. And he responded and basically fucked it off and tried to threaten us. And I'm like, you're not going to intimidate me respectfully because I'm like, you're not going to intimidate me, and I'm not going to stop because you need to read this information. Omar Algebra, so many different people. And I was saying, put your ego aside and listen to people that actually know what the fuck is going on. I didn't say it like that. Marco Menincino, yeah, that clown who was the public safety officer during that period as well, especially during the Freedom Convoy. And he was having talks with, was it David Lametti, about employing tanks on innocent civilians during a peaceful protest. Mercedes Stevenson as well, against someone who put a hit piece together, sexual misconduct of high-ranking officials, including John Vance, who is a legend and a hero. And he was someone that was opposed to the forced inoculations and extreme lockdowns and measures that were put in place. And again, this hit piece forced him to resign. And then we get people like Wayne Eyre, who again was fully on board with pushing this and created the Can4 Gens. And again, people's lives were destroyed. People that I know personally that were kicked out while pregnant, high risk pregnancy because it was their first pregnancy and they were in their late 30s at the time, didn't want to risk it. And this prick, anyway, she got kicked out. So there are people in the courts still in 2025 that are trying to get accountability and their lives back in some closure because of morons. And Chrissy Sky too, I had emailed him. So many different people. And Yeah, no one responded in any meaningful way. Absolutely disgusting. And so I'm going to show the VAERS again that they received, these clowns received. And again, I'm being too aggressive here. I apologize for that. This just fires me up. At least I'm not crying like I have in earlier videos about the level of frustration, because again, this harmed so many different people, and including people that I know personally. It's very tragic. Okay, so why is it not even letting me? Let me try this again. Okay, now it's coming up. All right, and so myocarditis. I haven't even touched pericarditis yet, but myocarditis, and this is giant cell myocarditis. That's how you can tell it's vaccine induced. Very easy to tell. Naturally forming myocarditis opposed to vaccine induced, and I've talked about that as well. This is from February 2021, like I've said before. And this was, again, shared with all levels of government and media outlets and many different people of influence. And I got nothing back. No one asked me to go on any friggin' podcasts, even at this time, or any interviews or anything. But, and again, these are people that I was responding to personally. So, myocardial infarction, arrhythmia, cardiac failure acute, cardiogenic shock, coronary artery disease, myocardial infarction, etc. Anyways, and so here are confirmed cases, multiple different countries of incidents, and including death. And they were trying to say that people were not vaccinated or not considered to be vaccinated until 2 weeks after the vaccine, or whatever you want to call it. I don't call it a vaccine. Yeah, so that was from February of 2021. And as soon as I got access to this information, because again, I was doing my own research on a VPN, looking at different countries, because I wasn't getting that from Canada. So I just put in Mayo for Canada, just to give you some examples here. This is from the 16th of March, 2022. That was the lock date. And again, the VAERS that were reported, I'm being generous in saying that 3 to 5% of the actual VAERS were actually reported on these databases. And some people are saying that it's like around 1% of the VAERS that were actually reported properly. Why? Because there was financial incentive during this time, and people were cowards and didn't want to share this information properly. And so if you look at this, cardiac disorders, and again, these are vaccine adverse events reported. Acute myocardial infarction, total 28, fatal 2. So they knew people were dying from it as early as March of 2022, in the later stages of it, again, February of 2021, but this is March of 2022. And Pfizer needed to get sued in order to get this information out. And what happened during this time, or what was ongoing during this time? First, it was the Freedom Convoy, and then it was Russia-Ukraine proxy wars. And so they wanted to bury this and distract us with other events so that people wouldn't get access to this information. And again, I'll reiterate, this is just from Pfizer alone. This doesn't include Moderna or AstraZeneca or J&J. Angina pectoris, 326, fatal 1. Look at this one, myocardial infarction, 294, 42 fatal. Myocardial ischemia, 12, 7 fatal. So again, they're calling it other things, and they're putting, again, like different names for essentially the same conditions, so that it doesn't look as bad. Myocardial disorders, again, cardiac ventricular scarring. Is this the right one? No, cardiomegaly, I think is how you pronounce it. 52, 3 fatal. Left ventricle dysfunction, 15. Myocardial fibrosis, myocardial injury, myocardial necrosis, etc., etc., etc. It goes down the friggin' list here. Yeah, so myocarditis, 756. This is high, and they're saying that there's 2 fatal. But again, they're like putting in different types in order to make it look like it's not as extreme. And then even here, you got pericarditis, and again, there were some that were fatal as well. And this was from March 2022, and again, also in February of 2021. And our cabinet members and our health experts, etc., had this information. And how do I know? Because people, like, I sent it to them personally, and I received the acknowledgement, the automatic response that the email address received these emails. Pericardial disorders, pericardial effusion. Like, look at this. Like, the friggin' numbers are staggering. And again, I was only looking at myocarditis. So again, it goes on from here. This is the same page, but yeah, so many different cases of this. And even in 2023, 2024, people were still pushing the vaccine on people and people to get boosted. Absolutely disgusting to me that people did not have informed consent. And we had people lying, our health experts saying, oh, this is absolutely safe. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. This is just myocarditis bacteria. And there's so many other, obviously, VAERS that happened. But these are, again, just because we're talking about myocarditis and pericarditis. So yeah, look at this. Oh, there's someone that's probably at my door. Maybe it's the CIA. I'm kidding. Look at this, myalgia. Anyways, I can show so many other different VAERS that I would love to unpack, but I don't want this to be too long because I do want to, well, it's not that I want to, I'm going to be meeting someone at the gym shortly. But I did want to share just what was happening during the Freedom Convoy. This was September 30th, 2021 in Ontario, Canada. This is how unvaccinated Canadians were treated. A pregnant woman arrested in front of her crying children. This was disgusting and inhumane, and all of it unwarranted. Never forget.
We are within our rights.
But again, reintroduction. And she has a mask on. She looks. She might have been pregnant. I don't know.
Why are you arresting her? Why are you arresting her? You didn't say why she's under arrest.
Now it's under the Trespass to Property Act.
OPP, Ottawa Police, Ottawa Provincial Police.
We are within our rights. Why did you arrest her?
I've already told you twice.
It's not trespassing. We are within our rights.
We've been asked, but I have to.
A mandate is not a law.
A mandate is not a law. Let's see here. There was a few other things here. On May 8th, 2024, AstraZeneca was pulled from the market due to a serious side effect involving blood clots. Theresa Tam ignored all early warning signs and advised Canadians to inject themselves with a lethal dose of the product, and now she's receiving the Order of Canada.
Not been associated with an increase. There have been recent reports in Europe of blood clots following vaccination.
Those are in the VAERS as well, significant blood clotting, and so many other VAERS that, again, I don't want to talk about too much because I've done so many different videos on this where I've unpacked this for the last few years.
The AstraZeneca vaccine. Health Canada has been working closely with international regulators to gather and assess the available information and has determined that the AstraZeneca vaccine has not been associated with an increase in the overall risk of blood clots. Has not been associated with an increase in the overall risk of blood clots. Overall, the benefits.
All right. There's so many other things I shared or liked. Let's see here, the replies. Anyway, you get the point about, if anyone's watching my channel right now, you know what we experienced during the pandemic era and how it was not going to get better until the Freedom Convoy was hijacked by grassroots people. Because again, I will say that this was a staged and planned protest. There were paid actors that were going to be pushing a narrative of white supremacy, right-wing extremists, etc. And they wanted this to get as violent as possible, which is disgusting. And people like myself went to the the different areas that the convoy was stopping at even before going into Ottawa, and we were calling out anyone that was an actor or a paid protester. And then also downtown as well. And so the person possibly being allegedly Brian Fox, who was the head of Enterprise, who was the one that was wearing the balaclava and holding up that Nazi flag, etc., and getting the photo ops for Justin Trudeau, etc., who was hiding apparently that first weekend and preparing his notes for his speech on that Monday because he thought it was going to get a lot more violent than what it actually did get. Because again, we ruined it for them. We exposed anyone that was there to cause harm or to create like riot type incidents or events, and it worked. And it worked. And so let me see if there's anything else on that I wanted to share. I'll go on my social media. And by the way, I did contact the office of the Secretary to the Governor General, and I was very respectful. And I was talking to a man that didn't sound like he cared at all or was taking notes, but I said that I was very upset that Theresa Tam received the Order of Canada for her actions and role during COVID-19, this pandemic. I didn't call it a pandemic, but I wanted to. And I said that she was suppressing information and that she had received emails, even by myself personally, giving medical, scientific, and government data that proved that there were a lot of bears in relation to the COVID-19 shot, and that these mandates and lockdowns were extreme and deemed to be unlawful and unconstitutional early on in January of 2024, years later. And so the number is 613-993-8200. And again, be respectful. But if people want to reach out to that office and say that they are unhappy or appalled with the fact that Theresa Tam actually got an Order of Canada, who's not a hero, someone that should be in jail, and give it to someone like Helen Gruce or Tamara Leach or Chris Babar or Jeremy McKenzie, people like that, that's who that friggin' order deserves to go to, and not that disgusting clown who lied to us. I said what I said. Again, I know I'm so aggressive today. My apologies. I get fired up. He also got an Order of Canada for his actions during this time. So ex-Deputy Health Minister Stephen Lucas, who was previously caught distributing expired AstraZeneca vaccines after they were falsely relabeled by Health Canada, has been appointed to the Order of Canada. And so does this mean anything anymore? I don't know. So that was just me sharing the FDA updates yesterday. All right, should I go on to the moon landings? Yeah. Okay, I will. All right, here's a quick video. Well, it's quick to me. Did we really land on the moon? I shared on my Instagram story today. I've done countless videos over the last few years on debunking the moon landings. I know this is very controversial to people. I understand that. But if you've looked at my research into COVID, into 9/11, into the Freedom Convoy, into January 6th, so many different events, I was correct in that. And so just maybe consider that I might be correct in this as well. And take a look at my videos before you just completely dismiss this, because there's a lot of money and propaganda and psychological operations that are going on that are pushing this narrative. And again, if you want to look at saving your money, taxpayers' money, that's really it. There's a lot of it again going towards these narratives. Then this could help us, right? We can save this money and we can put it towards better things that are more important, like being able to grow food, having sustainable agriculture in our northern regions in Canada, and not on propaganda that's only lining the pockets of elitists that are super nationalists that are laughing at us for believing this. This is something I shared over 2 years ago, and this is 9 years old. And the title is "Did We Really Land on the Moon?" And it's from DJ Hardcore Truth on YouTube. And again, there's a lot of videos from this account that I don't subscribe to, but this was just very interesting.
It all started for Stanley Kubrick in late 1963, right before the release of Dr. Strangelove. This Cold War black comedy took the stuffings out of all things that America held sacred. With this one film, Stanley Kubrick rose up to the heights of his filmmaking abilities. And the Pentagon was not happy with Dr. Strangelove and his brutal portrayal of mad, murderous generals and the stumbling bumpkins running the U.S. war machine. In fact, the Pentagon turned Kubrick down when he asked for permission to shoot inside and outside of one of their B-52 bombers. One read of the script of Dr. Strangelove convinced them that this film was going to be dangerous and that Stanley Kubrick might be an agitator artist.
How long would you have to stay down there? Dude, that's,
The Pentagon saw Dr. Strangelove, and they knew they had their guy. But for what? It was at that moment that everything would change for Kubrick. If he accepted their offer, he would get anything he wanted. If he declined, they might just get rid of him. In a sense, once the offer was made, Stanley had to take it. And so Stanley Kubrick accepted a deal with the devil, so to speak. It may make you uncomfortable, but as Morpheus says in The Matrix, I didn't say it would be easy. I only said it would be the truth. So what was the deal that he made in 1963 with the military? That deal was that Stanley Kubrick would film and fake the Apollo moon landings. It has now been 40 years since the fabled moon landings by NASA and the Apollo gang. When it comes to the subject of the moon landings, people tend to fall into two belief groups. First group, by far the bigger of the two groups, accepts the fact that NASA successfully landed on the moon 6 times and that 12 human beings have actually walked on the surface of the moon. The second group, though far smaller, is more vocal about their beliefs. This group says that we never went to the moon and that the entire thing was faked. I would like to present a third position on this issue. This third point of view falls somewhere between these two assertions. This third position postulates that humans did go to the moon, but what we saw on TV and in photographs is complete.
See, that's where we already disagree. We have not landed on the moon, but I'm still going to watch this because it's very interesting.
Fake. Furthermore, this third position reveals that Stanley Kubrick is the genius who directed the hoaxed landings. Someone in NASA or the Pentagon saw what Kubrick had done in Dr. Strangelove with the B-52s, and admiring his artfulness, designated Kubrick as the person best qualified to direct the Apollo moon landings. If he could do that well on a limited budget, what could he do on an unlimited budget? In the end, it looks like Kubrick faked the moon landings in return for two things. The first was a virtually unlimited budget to make his ultimate science fiction film, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and the second was that he would be able to make any film he wanted, with no oversight from anyone, for the rest of his life. Except for his last film, Eyes Wide Shut, Kubrick got what he wanted. The most pressing problem for Kubrick in 1964 was to figure out how to make the shots on the ground, on the surface of the moon, look realistic. He had to make the scenes look wide open and expansive, like it was really done on the moon, and not in some studio backlot. No one knows how many things he tried, but eventually Kubrick settled on doing the entire thing with a cinematic technique called front screen projection. It is in the use of this cinematic technique that the fingerprints of Kubrick can be seen all over the NASA Apollo photographic and video material. But what is front screen projection? Kubrick did not invent the process, but there is no doubt that he perfected it. Front screen projection is a cinematic device that allows scenes to be projected behind the actors so that it appears in the camera as if the actors are moving around on the set provided by the front screen projection. The process came into fruition when the 3M company invented a material called Scotchlite. This was a screen material that was made up of hundreds of thousands of tiny glass beads. These beads were highly reflective. In the front screen projection process, the Scotchlite screen would be placed at the back of the soundstage. The plane of the camera lens and the Scotchlite screen had to be exactly 90 degrees apart. A projector would project the scene onto the Scotchlite screen through a mirror, and the light would go through a beam splitter, which would pass the light into the camera. An actor could stand in front of the Scotchlite screen, and he would appear to be inside the projection. Today, Hollywood's magicians use green screens and computers for special effects, and so the front screen projection system has gone the way of the adding machine and the Model T. But for its time, especially in the 1960s, nothing worked better than front screen projection for that realistic look that would be needed both for the 8-man scenes in 2001: A Space Odyssey and the faked Apollo moon landings. One has to remember that the early scenes in 2001 with the actors in ape costumes were all done on a sound stage. None of what you were seeing in the 8-man scenes at the beginning of 2001 was actually shot outside. One of the ways that you can tell the front screen system is being used is that the bottom horizon line between the actual set and the background Scotchlite screen has to be blocked. Kubrick strategically located rocks and other things near the bottom of the scene in order to hide the projection screen. In other words, the camera and the viewers would see the bottom of the background projection screen if it were not blocked in some fashion. As part of the trick, it becomes necessary to place things in between the screen and the set to hide the bottom of the screen. I have photoshopped a line differentiating the set and the background Scotchlite front projection screen. Please note how everything is in focus, from the pebbles on the ground in the set to the desert mountains beyond. You will see that hiding the bottom of the Scotchlite screen is always being done when the front screen projection system is being used in 2001: A Space Odyssey. Hiding the screen is one of the fingerprints. It is evidence of its use. As you will see before this film is finished, this same fingerprint, this same evidence is clearly seen in all of the NASA Apollo stills and video images. It is this fingerprint that reveals not only that NASA faked the Apollo missions, but how they faked them. Let's examine a few NASA Apollo images now. This is a still from Apollo 17. This is also a great example of the front screen projection process. Again, I have photoshopped a line indicating the back of the set. One can see that there is a slight uprising behind the rover, which is hiding the bottom of the screen. Also notice that even though everything is in focus, from the lunar rover to the mountains in the background, there is a strange change in the landscape of the ground right behind my lines. This is because the photo of the mountains being used on the front projection system has a slightly different ground texture than the set. As we go on, we will see that this fingerprint is also consistent throughout the Apollo images. Here's another Apollo image. Now here is my version where I show the line between the set and the screen. Again, notice the texture of the ground changes right behind my line. Now let's go to some more Apollo images. We can see that the same thing occurs here as in the 8-man scenes in 2001. There is always a line separating the set from the screen. Even if you do not see it at first, it will become apparent as one grows more familiar with the front screen projection process and how it is being used to fake the astronauts standing on the lunar surface. Go to any NASA site like www.apolloarchive.com and start looking for yourself. Not all lunar surface shots are using the process. Sometimes the astronauts are just standing on the set with a completely and suspicious black background. The early missions, Apollo 11 and 12, used the front screen projection system only when they had to. But as the missions went on and they had to look better, Kubrick began to perfect the process. Although you can see the front screen projection process on every mission, the seriously revealing images are in the later missions, particularly Apollo 14, 15, 16, and, my favorite, 17. Here are a few from Apollo 17. The astronaut is driving the lunar rover parallel to the screen, and the rover is only 3 or 4 feet away from the Scotchlight. Please note how the tire treads just lead to nowhere. Actually, they are going to the edge of the set. In this one, the astronaut is about 6 feet in front of the Scotchlight screen. Please note how everything is in focus, from the rocks and pebbles close to the camera all the way to the crystal clear mountain behind the astronaut. As we shall see, even that is impossible. Also, please note the other telltale evidence that permeates the Apollo images. There is a stark difference in the ground texture between the set and what is being projected onto the screen. You can almost count the number of small rocks, and the granularity of the ground is clearly seen on the set. But once we get to the screen on the other side of my line, this granularity disappears. This next image is a slick little piece of work. When first viewed, one is sure that they are looking across the vast, unbroken lunar surface from beginning to end. With the Earth rising, it is truly a stunning shot. But sure enough, close examination reveals a set screen line once again. Again, please note the change in the texture of the ground immediately on each side of the line. The little pebbles and dust just seem to disappear behind my line. But there's more. One of the many things that many researchers have discovered about the Apollo footage is that if you slightly speed up the footage of the astronauts walking around on the lunar surface, they appear to be doing their business in normal speed, like they are on Earth. It is apparent that the footage has been shot in slow motion to give the effect of a low-gravity situation. It seems odd that one would move slower in a low-gravity environment because the low gravity would cause even less resistance, not more. In the scenes in 2001, near the beginning, we see the people on the ship and on the lunar surface also moving in a slightly slow-motion manner. Again, this doesn't make a lot of sense in a real-life situation. If anything, they should be moving faster than on Earth because there's less gravity. But showing astronauts moving normally really causes the action to look unreal and staged. So Kubrick decided to shoot the moon scenes both in 2001 and in the Apollo landings in slow motion to make it more convincing. In a way, we were being set up by the film 2001 to accept the odd slow motion in the Apollo scenes. This may have been one of the reasons to release 2001 a year before the Apollo 11 landing. By creating a slow motion environment in 2001, the audience would then accept the slow motion environment being portrayed in the Apollo footage. There is one thing that I'm sure of. Some part of Stanley Kubrick wanted everyone to know what he had done, and that is why he left behind clues that would explain who did it and how. Film Wag the Dog, Dustin Hoffman plays a movie producer hired by the CIA to fake an event. His name in the movie is Stanley. In that movie, Stanley mysteriously dies after telling everyone that he wants to take credit for the event that he helped to fake. Stanley Kubrick died 4 days after showing Eyes Wide Shut to the executives at Warner Brothers. It is rumored that they were very upset concerning the film. They wanted Kubrick to re-edit the film, but he refused. I personally was in France when Kubrick died and saw on French television outtakes from several scenes that were never in the finished film. And finally, Eyes Wide Shut was released on July 16, 1999. Stanley Kubrick insisted in his contract that this be the date of the release. July 16, 1999 is exactly 30 years to the day that Apollo 11 was launched.
Bart Sabral, or Bert Sabral, whatever you want to call him, he has so many good, I would say, like interviews and I would say documentaries that he has also shared. And one of them is A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. And again, I've also shared that, and I highly encourage people to take a look at it, so don't just take my word for it. Now on to some other news, because I was talking about Brigitte Macron, and I have for years, and so has Candace Owens. And so this was interesting.
Le 29 juin, un homme a été retrouvé mort après une terrible chute depuis sa fenêtre dans le 12e arrondissement de Paris. Le bureau du médecin légiste a déclaré que François Fèvre, âgé de 58 ans, s'est suicidé.
Est-ce que c'est tout en français? Okay, so they're alleging that that this guy killed himself by jumping out of a window, and his sister is saying that he was not suicidal, and he was going to be doing an interview in the near future, the very near future, calling out the surgeries that Brigitte Macron has received as part of her transgender reassignment, whatever you want to call it. And I'll just want to see if there's any English
Il
subtitles.
était chirurgien, travaillait dans une clinique parisienne. La sœur de François
He worked in a Parisian clinic.
Fèvre, Anne Dupont, affirme qu'il n'était pas suicidaire et que
Anne Dupont was his sister, and she said that he was not suicidal.
sa mort est probablement liée à l'entretien qu'il devait donner.
And she was saying that his death is probably coinciding with the interview that he was going to be providing.
Selon Madame Dupont, son frère est un collègue du célèbre docteur Monsieur
She was a colleague of the doctor who actually performed the surgeries on Brigitte Macron.
Patrick Bouilly. François Fèvre avait promis aux journalistes de faire la lumière sur les
He was one of the first to speak out on these surgeries.
opérations chirurgicales controversées de Madame Brigitte Macron. Voici un extrait de la vidéo de son entretien avec un journaliste du magazine Closer.
J'ai encore beaucoup d'informations sous
I have a lot of information
forme de notes, de copies de dossiers médicaux.
about the people that about the surgeries.
Lors de notre rencontre, je pourrais vous dire plus sur mon travail avec le docteur
I can give more of the information on the work
Patrick Bouilly.
of the work that was done by Patrick Bouilly.
J'ai travaillé à l'hôpital américain de Paris pendant.
He worked in the American Parisian
Closer.
hospital.
J'ai encore beaucoup d'informations sous forme de notes, de copies de dossiers médicaux. Lors de notre rencontre, je pourrais vous dire plus sur mon travail avec le docteur Patrick Bouilly. J'ai travaillé à l'hôpital américain de
Okay, so the American hospital in Paris
Paris pendant 6 ans.
for 6 years.
Dr Bouilly était un de mes proches collègues.
Dr. Bouillier was one of his was a close colleague of his.
Il m'a transmis beaucoup d'informations sur
He gave him a lot of information
ses patients.
y compris sur les
of that patient. So he's talking about Brigitte Macron
épouses du président français.
Oui, il m'a
regarding the alleged wife of the president.
parlé des changements physiques que
Changes in the physical. The physical changes in of the body that was of these surgeries that were being conducted.
Madame Brigitte Macron a subi lors de l'opération de chirurgie transgenre dans
Transgender surgeries being conducted
l'hôpital.
in that
Vous
hospital.
parlez là de son opération de changement de sexe.
The operations, the sex change operations.
Pouvez-vous me raconter un peu plus en détail?
Le sujet des opérations chirurgicales transgenres de Brigitte Macron est devenu de plus en plus viral en 2025 lorsque la
So in 2025, after Candace Owens started talking about this, it became more public.
journaliste américaine Candace Owens a
American
publié
journalist.
son émission d'investigation Becoming Brigitte.
Her investigations regarding Brigitte Macron, Becoming Brigitte, an investigative series by Candace Owens. I'm sure everyone has seen that before. If you have not, please take a look at these videos that she has shared on her channel. So anyway, it's hard to do direct translations when you haven't looked at the video before, and it's hard to do a direct translation of French because again, just how the sequence goes. Again, for anyone that's French, it's you can relate to that. But here is another story regarding it. So the surgeon who announced Brigitte Macron's transgender transformation found dead in Paris,
Le 9 juin, un homme a été
and that was on June 29th. A man was found dead,
retrouvé mort après une terrible chute depuis sa fenêtre dans le 12e
Falling out of a
arrondissement de
window.
Paris. Le bureau du
actually in the 12th floor of Paris. The medical examiner's office said François Fèvre, 58, committed suicide. He was a surgeon and worked in a Parisian clinic. François Fèvre's sister, Anne Dupont, says that he was not suicidal and that his death is probably related to the interview he was supposed to give. According to Miss Dupont, one of the famous surgeons, Mr. Patrick. François Fèvre had promised to shed light on the controversial surgical operations of Miss Brigitte Macron. Here's the footage from the video of his interview with a journalist of the Closer magazine. So anyways, that's just very interesting. And so there's more and more information going on, getting released regarding Brigitte Macron, and it's possibly being Jean-Michel Tragnon, who assumed this identity and who was possibly the teacher, Emmanuel Macron's teacher, when he was 14. And this guy was allegedly either in his late 30s or early 40s. So again, this is grooming. This is him possibly being a pedophile and sexually abusing a minor. And so this is why Candace Owens has spoken out about this. And there's possibly, again, I'm not going to make assumptions here as to why they're still together. And so, yeah, look at Candace Owens' interviews, look at some of the podcasts I've done on becoming Brigitte as well, and information that has come out from heroic journalists within France, Paris, France specifically. And again, it's just about the lies. It's just about the lies. And so, again, a longer video, but on that note, I hope that everyone has a happy Independence Day if you are from the US and celebrating today. Be vigilant and cautious. I really hope that nothing happens, especially in and around New York. And so on that note, I will leave it at that. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.